Well, hopefully you have been watching the new Calexit documentary that's been released by Awfully Nice Production Company and Warner Brothers Music. Yes, California Calexit, myself, Jason, and the real Calexiters are featured prominently in that, letting them know that we are the definitive movement and that we have actual brain power behind what we say. Now, there's a couple things that were said in the documentary that I'm not saying they didn't say correctly, but I just wanted to clear up, just to make sure. Not saying anybody did anything wrong, just wanted to clear up. So real quick, let me show you this. This is part 4, just released. Part 4, the great state of Jefferson, the last resort. Let's take a listen if we can get a little bit of it.
This episode contains graphic language and content that may be alarming to some. Listener discretion is advised.
So that is a little bit of the documentary, The Last Resort, by Interval Films, about the Calexit documentary. Couple points I wanted to clear up. This is about Jefferson. Now, they almost suggested that, yes, California was a conservative organization. What they pointed out was that Louis Marinelli had previously voted for Trump and was previously against the gay marriage, and that I was an ex-conservative. All of that is true. What was not mentioned was that I never voted for Trump and I hated Trump, and I said that literally every day, and that I was the guy on the ground. So while Louis was around, Louis was in another continent. From basically July 2017, from July 2017 to now, I was the dude on the ground and I was calling the shots. And how do we know that? Because the LA Times printed that I took over as presidency and the top leader in July 2017. From that time, I was directing everything. So I said, I hate Trump, and we definitely hate Trump. Now, we did say the movement was not about Trump. It was about America and long-term problems. And we had started the organization with Obama, and we were citing the same problems under Obama continued under Trump. And that's all true. But I just wanted to make it clear, we were progressive, we hated Trump, we talked about how Trump sucks, but we never said this was about Trump. We said it was about California and the long-term relations with the federal government. Initially, I hate Trump, and I always brought that up all the time. That was not mentioned in the radio show. It kind of came across as maybe we were sort of friendly to Trump. Maybe someone can interpret that. No, they didn't say that, but I wanted to be clear. Also, the other thing not mentioned is that I left the Republican Party in 2012 specifically because of racism. I have said that at least a million times. That was not in the documentary. It just said I was an ex-Republican. What does that mean? He still believes in it? No, I left because in 2012, Mitt Romney did horribly with Latinos when George W. Bush did well with them. And I realized that the Republican Party was going to have to embrace Latinos and bring them in. They started to do that with W. Bush and then pulled away with Romney. And for me, I interpret that as saying they're going to go for white nationalism instead of incorporation of minorities. And I said that in 2012, 4 years before Donald Trump ever became president, and literally did what I predicted. Also want to point out, yes, California is a very progressive organization. And from the very beginning, we were very progressive. So even if I was an ex-Republican and even if Louis voted for Trump, we did things like sponsoring undocumented immigrants, making plans to return land to the indigenous. And we talked about every other liberal cause du jour throughout. So it was very progressive side. Yes, there is some history there of ex-Republicans being part of this, but the organization of the movement, certainly from 2016 on, and actually from 2014 on, was highly in line with California values and still is today. Now, they seem to suggest that, yes, California Calexit was about empowering Trump-loving areas and splitting California up. And I wanted to make it clear that we recognize that conservative areas don't get the amount of representation that they need. The Jefferson area, the Inland Empire area, and parts of the rural Central Valley. And we said that while California is going to be progressive, and it's about a progressive place, it's not fair that people don't get the amount of representation that they should. So we suggested that you could make states out of the new nation of California, and those states would be able to report directly to the president, which would give more representation to people in Jefferson. So in the documentary, they talk about our plan was to give more representation to the people of Jefferson. That's true. We were going to do that by creating states, not by changing the direction of politics in California. Very different. Just wanted to be clear. Also, it seemed to suggest that Calexit thought the water issue wasn't a big issue if Jefferson left. We wanted to make clear. We recognize that water for California comes from the Jefferson region. We're very cognizant of. We said Jefferson can't leave. A, because they can't get the votes from the rest of California, which they are required to do under the American Constitution. And they can't get those votes from the rest of California because they said California sucks and they're all about Trump when California hated Trump. So you just insulted the people you have to get approval from. And the Constitution says you have to get a majority approval from the state for a subsection of the state to leave. So they just insulted the voting base that they're going to have to get that from. Secondly, Tim Draper, the billionaire, had two plans, 3 Californias and 6 Californias. Both of them failed, and there were surveys by the Public Policy Institute of California on both attempts to split California into multiple states that said and showed in surveys 67 to 75% of Californians were against splitting up the state. So whenever Californians have been proposed with the idea of splitting up the state, they're dead set against it. 2 surveys recently. And they don't really like the Jefferson people. They don't agree with their politics, and they don't like being insulted. And you're going to have to get Californians to approve before Jefferson can ever leave and become another state. That means Jefferson will never get the votes to leave California. We also said that Jefferson was likely never to receive the ability to vote to leave California in secession because the federal government doesn't recognize counties, but only states. Counties are created by states. So counties can't go to the federal government and demand being addressed because they don't exist federally. States exist at the federal level. States interact with the federal government. States create counties, not federal government. So you're having a governmental unit not recognized by the federal government is going to go and redress for grievances. There's no mechanism in the government to do that. So Jefferson can't secede and stay part of America if we secede anyways, because there'd be no way for them to go to Congress and say, as a group of counties, we expect our grievance to be addressed. Doesn't exist that way for federal representation. So they're never going to get the votes to leave as a state, and they're never going to get the votes to leave if California secedes. And that's why the water won't be an issue, because they're going nowhere, and they will never be able to take the water from us. That's what I said. That wasn't totally clear in the documentary. One last thing. They seem to suggest the guy no longer associated with the movement was personally controlling the posts and preventing liberal sentiments. I want to clear that up. I took over as president in July 2017. He was in the LA Times. I was here on the ground. Lewis was not. I directed traffic. I was the controller for all the posts. Now, sometimes posts went up that I didn't personally agree with, had a lot of arguments. Sometimes people were able to slip things past me, but to say that Lewis was moderating the posts from 2017 to 2022 and dominating what was posted, that's not true. I was directing the post, and he had to go through me for permission. So just wanted to clear up the facts. They didn't necessarily say that in the documentary, but if it's suggested, I wanted to point out that it's not true. Otherwise, we love the documentary. Encourage you to check it out. Okay.